So,
It's all about me.
Should it be about me?
No, because tonight it's all about me.
you can. Yeah. Like, one of them. Are there any open seats there? I think there's one here, one back there.
Right there. Maybe it might-
There's some more open seats if you want to sit
They're not
down.
showing up. But sure. Absolutely, that would be great.
Okay, I would like to open the February 9th, 2023 planning board meeting. The first item this evening is a continuation of public hearing for WS Development. Jim, can you bring us up to speed on that?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Jim Kupfer, Town Planner. Yes, WS Development has asked for a continuation. They have met with staff in order to fully understand the concerns of the board and traffic impacts, as well as furthering their discussions with the Conservation Commission. They don't have plans ready for this evening, so they have asked for a continuation to the next month's first meeting if possible.
Is anyone here from WS to speak this evening? Seeing none, they've requested the continuance of the moment tonight. I would entertain a motion. A second. Any discussion?
Question.
Yes.
Jim, we've had a couple of these already, right? In a row? How many in a row have we had continuances?
Yeah, so we have had a few in a row from this applicant. You can continue to consider the continuation as long as the deadline extension goes along with it. And I know Amy's been working diligently to make sure that the decision deadline has been extended appropriately.
Okay, I'm for it, but if we're gonna have more, I think we ought to extend it out a little bit longer.
Currently, we're extending the decision deadline until July 30th.
July 30th.
Yes.
Jim, should we extend it further?
I think that's appropriate for the decision deadline.
Okay.
And we can reconsider it in July, certainly, if it's still before you.
Okay, what I'd like to also see, since we're discussing this, is give us an updated overview as well on March 9th, because it's been a while since we've seen it. So there's a motion on the floor. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 That motion passes unanimously. The next item is a public hearing on North and Blackstone Street. I'd like to read the motion here. The applicant, Raven Homes Incorporated, and owner Raven Homes, wants to construct 12 three-unit townhouses with associated improvements at North Blackstone Street in Bellingham. Approximately 20.8 plus or minus acres of land shown on assessors map 59, lot 68, zone agricultural. This application falls under the town of Bellingham zoning bylaws subsection 240-101, special residential use, townhouse dwelling, subsection 240-16, development plan approval, subsection 240-54, and stormwater management, section 240, subsection 240-60. What I'd like to say, this is our first meeting this evening on this proposal. Jim, can you tell us how we got here?
Absolutely, thank you. So yes, so as just mentioned by the chair, The applicant, the application is for 12 3-unit townhomes with associated improvements over a 20.8 acre, essentially at the corner of North and Blackstone Street, and zone agriculture. Agriculture is a 2-acre minimum lot area for a buildable lot. As the chair has mentioned, the section that is being applied under is 240-101 for special residential uses, townhome dwelling. The planning board and maybe the public are asking, how could an application be before this board for that section? And so I just wanted to quickly go over somewhat of the history there. At town meeting in May of 2021, May 26th of 2021, the town meeting repealed this very section. Planning board, obviously, you guys are very much familiar with this as you were the sponsor of that article. Given the fact that, permits were being before you, there was many suggestions and statements that housing options were being reviewed and considered, and there have been a number of large-scale housing developments, those being both townhome and mixed housing options. And the planning board at that time and the town meeting agreed that the town has seen a significant amount of additional housing units and voted to repeal this specific section. Now, the property in question, the site that's before you this evening, did file just before town meeting on, I believe it was May 18th, an approval not required plan on Mass General Law 81P plan that allows for this site to be considered through Mass General Law 40A6 to consider this zoning bylaw for the next 3 years. Obviously, since May 2021 to now is within 3 years. So the applicant at this time, as town is continuing, the town attorney is continuing to review, but at this time it appears that the applicant has proceeded in accordance with Mass General Law, and that is why the planning board is required to open a hearing and consider this application. Real quick, if I may, in considering this application, I just wanted to read verbatim for the board and for the public, just so you understand. This is a special permit. It's not by right. It's a special permit, and such special permit shall be granted only if the planning board determines that the proposal would serve the town interests better than would single-family development of the same area, considering the following, and I'll just read these following real quickly. A, municipal cost and revenue. B, effect on the range of housing choice, available housing choice, excuse me. C, service to identified housing needs. D, service to current Bellingham residents. E, support for local business activity and jobs. F, impact on the natural environment, especially on ground and surface water quality and level. G, impacts on traffic safety and congestion, adequacy of water service, and the need for school facilities. And lastly, H, impacts on the visual environment through preservation or displacement of visual assets and consistency with existing development area. So that is before you tonight, this application for those determinate factors for a special permit in accordance with the ordinance that has been repealed, but in accordance with Mass General Law is still an option for this site specifically. I hope that, and I'm happy to answer any questions on that because I know that's a lot.
The questions of what Jim said so far. What I like to do is outline some criteria for tonight's meeting based on the audience we have here. We're going to request a presentation from the applicant. The board will review the proposal and ask questions. We'll then open it up to the public to ask questions. What I ask of you is if you haven't signed in, please sign in already. State your name and address when you ask the question. There are a lot of you here. I would like to see, we cannot ask, I don't want the same question repeated several times. So we could try to accomplish that, would be greatly appreciated. Hope that we could rotate who asked the question, it'd be greatly appreciated. This is our first meeting this evening, and you know, it's a very transparent process. So with that, unless anyone has any questions about the process for tonight, I'd like to open it up to the applicant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amanda Cavalieri. I'm with Gary and Howland, representing the applicant Raven Homes. And thank you, Jim, for the explanation. That was very helpful with some of the beginning process. I'm gonna come over to the boards for a few minutes just to kind of go over the project. So as Jim had mentioned, this is a site that's been in front of the board before. And it was originally proposed as a 4-lot subdivision. The applicant has decided to pursue townhouse development. And when this lot was originally looked at several years back with the 4-lot subdivision, it also had to go through conservation commission as far as the wetlands. And because of the size of the land, which is 20.8 acres, meets the requirement to allow us to do a conservation restriction as well. So conservation restrictions, anything to do with the wetland buffers, it has been going through Conservation Commission. We just went there last night, and that was continued until March, where we're hoping to have a peer review. So any questions related to the conservation side of things, that'll be coming as well simultaneously with planning board submission. So what I've tried to do here is to color the plans, give the public a little bit more explanation and overview of the parcel. Sometimes the black and whites are a little bit hard to follow. So this area here in white and this orange part here, along with this green area, everything outlined in the red is the current property, the 20.8 acres. This area here is roughly 8.2 acres. This is the area that we're planning to develop. The remaining area of roughly 12.6 acres is going to remain conservation restriction. So that will be turned over to the town at a later date and will remain undeveloped. As part of that process, and back when the 4-lot subdivision went through, we also had to do coordination with Natural Heritage and Massachusetts Environmental Species Act and go through that permitting process as well. So there's additional permits associated with the site. So existing conditions for what's out there right now. So the area proposed to be developed is this area here. This is the existing conditions plan. The dark green represents the existing tree line that's out there. And this area is currently grassland, agricultural land, and previously disturbed. Not a whole lot of trees in this area here where we're proposing. And over to the easterly side is the wetlands. So as you can see, there's about half of the area has trees out there right now. So this is an overview of the site layout. I also have another one that we can go in with the existing tree lines, but I'll leave this up here and I'll sit down and kind of go over a little bit more of the history of the project. So prior to filing, we ended up sitting with a preliminary development team in the town of Bellingham, and we had some conversations with all the different department heads and went through the project. And we, based on our meeting with town personnel, we had made some changes from our original layout. Our original layout had included more units and more impervious area. And since that time, in February, we reduced the overall number of buildings to show 12 3-unit townhouses for a total of 36. They are proposed to each have 2 bedrooms for a total of 72 bedrooms. We also removed a cul-de-sac and added a second means of access and egress off North Street at the request of the deputy fire chief during those meetings. We modified the infiltration basin sizes to minimize potential impacts on the wetland resource areas. So those are located within the 50 to 100-foot buffer. We've also reduced the amount of impervious coverage. And, we reduced the proposed development area and increased the proposed conservation restriction land through extensive discussions with natural heritage. We've also added visitor parking in a common mailbox area onto the plans. As far as the development goes, we based our number of units on the total acreage of the land based on the zoning bylaws. And it was 1 bedroom per 10,000 square feet of land would give you the number of bedrooms. Based on the total land area, which is 20+ acres, we could have up to possibly have permitted up to 91 bedrooms. We're proposing 72. We have 77 parking spaces on site. We also have a 5-foot sidewalk for pedestrian access throughout the site. And I think that's about it as far as the development itself goes. As far as stormwater management goes, we're proposing the above ground pension ponds. And there's also a septic system that would be private sewer and town water. In the packet that we provided lighting plans, a truck turning radius plan, as well as multiple details throughout the site. We are proposing the bituminous concrete curbing throughout the site and doing our best to minimize some of the tree clearing out there. So. This shows you the dark green area as far as the trees that are proposed to remain and to have the border. So this area is to be remain untouched to create a natural buffer between the abutting residents. There's a couple properties that are located up on this side, on the easterly side, that have houses on them across the street. But for the most part, from a visibility standpoint, we try to maintain that natural screening out there. These areas right here that you can see, these are the proposed leaching fields for the septic system. And as part of the Title V design requirements, which we would go through pending approval from all the different boards, is we would file for a septic system plan, and we're required to have area left for reserve areas. So in the event that system fails 20, 30 years from now, that they have additional land area to be able to develop over there as far as the septic system goes to replace it. So in the event of a failure. I think that's pretty much it. We've submitted a traffic study. I won't go into traffic. At the next hearing, we plan on having our traffic consultant come. They'll go over the traffic counts, the traffic study that was conducted on the site where it was the initial hearing. We didn't want to overwhelm too much information. We understand traffic is going to be a concern, as is always with developments this size. So we do have Vanass and Associates. They provided a traffic study to the town. So that was part of the original submission package. And we'll have them plan on attending the next hearing, and any questions that we get tonight, we'll relay back to our traffic consultant to be able to go over any questions, concerns, and explain how that study was conducted, when they conducted it, and the results from that study. That's about it.
Thank you. I'd like to now open it up to comments from the board. Nick,
But I don't think it's the most important thing to bring up initially. But we looked at the entrance on Blackstone Street, kind of with the plantings that are on the plan. I don't think it serves as much of a privacy screen as needed. I think that the intentions, which I agree with, were to bring in native kind of plantings, but I don't think that it's gonna block out, the backside of building 1 and building 12. So on the plans, the front side of the building, seems to be well thought out with the landscaping. The back sides of the buildings is typically where people that live in townhomes are gonna have their grills and their bikes and their stuff like that. I think that that area specifically, the direct line of sight too.
Okay.
Something like that.
We'll certainly take a look at that. Thank you.
Like to see the traffic peer review and the stormwater. And hear from the public as well, but, there's probably gonna be some comments from peer review about the infiltration basins being on 2 different properties. See that, the next point, the infiltration basin number 1 looks like it would be visible from the streets. So obviously, I don't see a full landscape plan patch, so we want to look at that as well. But I would want to hear from the residents on the whole piece of it.
If I may, through the chair.
certainly.
So basin number 2, that was brought up last night during Conservation Commission. I believe that's the one you're referring to as being off the property. So that's going, conservation land. Conservation Commission did bring that up. We are going to look at that, and we do understand we will be getting peer review comments back as far as stormwater goes. And our stormwater designer will be here at the next hearing as well. Again, preliminary overview of the project. We didn't want to get too technical as far
I
as
understand.
today.
I appreciate that.
And that's going to be looked at. The objective of that area was to utilize the natural existing contours and minimize some of that. And currently the water is going there. But we have talked with Conservation Commission, and we are taking a look at that to make sure that we can keep the stormwater on site.
So thank you for your presentation. This is gonna be a multi-meeting, process, so I'll keep my comments to a high level. So in the abstract, it strikes me that, a development of this size, this dense, is not in character with the existing abutting property. It also strikes me that property, a development this large and this dense on this particular road in town where it is narrow and curvy, to say the least, presents challenges. And with regard to the second, the second exit onto North Street, I wonder, and I have concerns about that exit being so close to that other intersection. Whereas North Street is also sort of a crazy street as well. My initial thoughts is that there's too many units here. And I would suggest and ask you to consider that as we move forward. So at an introductory level, I think those would be my thoughts.
No, very helpful. Thank you.
So I'll also try and keep it as high level as possible, not get into the weeds. I think from a density standpoint, I agree with you, Brian. It just seems like there's a lot of units in a small footprint. No matter of fact, Jim, question for you. For the calculation for those bedroom units for the townhouses, are you allowed to use the conservation restriction area or, I mean, it seems like the developable footprint is the lot one. Which obviously is not going to allow the 72 bedrooms. So,
That's a very good point, Rob. It doesn't specify. I would say as it reads, minimum lot area shall be 10,000 square feet per bedroom, but in no case shall lot area be less than 20 acres. I think you could certainly have a discussion about whether or not the phrase the lot area, the minimum lot area is that could be developed. You certainly could have that discussion with the applicant, certainly, and work through that formula there and see what
Okay.
that would be. That could be a request of the applicant to see what that formula would equate to without the conservation area.
gotcha. Is there, is that something that town council might be able to weigh in on too?
We could certainly make that request to town council, absolutely.
All right. If that's, well,
I think that makes sense.
okay,
Not
perfect.
to step on your toes.
That's okay, step away. So that's the density. I know it was brought up at the Conservation Commission meeting regarding the infiltration basin too. I had some concerns, not even necessarily the fact that it's on the conservation land, but also just the way it was modeled. I know you're using like 8.27 inch per hour wells rated with sands. If it's existing depression, it doesn't really seem correct to do that. Have you done any soil testing in that area? I see a test pit there, but I don't know if that was included in the stormwater report.
I'd have to look, honestly. I didn't bring
Okay.
the stormwater designer with me tonight, so,
Gotcha.
but we can certainly look at that and then we can include that in some of our discussions at the next hearing, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I know we're kind of teetering on the A-type, B-type soils on the soil map right there, so. That's one thing to look at. Now, going back to density, sort of. I would say my biggest quarrel with the plan as submitted has to do with the septic system. I do not like shared septic systems whatsoever. I know that this is more of a Board of Health concern and it's really under their review. But I know it's certainly that I think we should get some weigh-in from the Board of Health. Did we get anything, Amy, from any of the other?
We did just DPW.
Okay, so I would definitely reach out to the Board of Health. Reason being is I'm seeing some things on here, like, for example, I know you have the head walls near the entrance, where Blackstone Street is. That's a depression, because I assume that's an existing drainage swale along Blackstone Street. I don't know if that's gonna be breakout for type 5, so, we don't want septic leaching into that. So, there's that, and then also the reserved areas, I don't think you have separation to that property lines, I think it's supposed to be 20 feet. I can't confirm just because with the scale, and so these are some just overarching items that I noted. And I'll leave it at that, so I'm very interested to hear what the public has to say, and also peer review as well.
I'd like to wrap up on behalf of the board. I'd like to make sure you address the concern raised by Don DiMartino in regards to the water service in the area. Like the others, the density, I'm kind of concerned. You went from a piece of property that you wanted to have 4 single-family homes on to now 72 units. I think that's a bit much. Other people have mentioned the board. I want to be more specific. Going from 4 to 72 seems a little extreme to me. You get from a viewpoint. I know you reserve your right to go with townhouses, but I think we need to look at the density. And again, I'm more specific, going from 4 houses to 72. I think we need to look at that. I've also shared, we received some comments from neighbors. traffic is gonna be a big concern. North Street is freeway right now. And we want to try to limit as much traffic to that as we can. So we need to look at that. I'm also concerned about the shared septic system. The viability of that. Again, the safety for pedestrians. From an overviewing archery point, those are my concerns. I don't want to go deep into the weeds. But one thing I would like to ask for future meetings, is it possible that you can make it so your presentation can be shown on the screen
Absolutely.
for the benefit of everyone in attendance
Yes.
and people zooming in? So those are my 100,000 feet in the year over. We'll be more specific down the road. And I'd like to hear now from the public.
Mr. Chairman, before we hear from the public, do you mind if we enter in these?
I would like to have those letters from the residents entered in.
We do have one from Mr. Brian and Susan Kenny, and it's dated February 6th. We also have an email from Kimberly. It looks like it's Derby, and that's dated February 8th or 11:15. And then we also have a letter from Tina Haynes, and that was dated January 31st of 2023. So both will be part of the record.
Have those entered into the record.
And you have them in your packet.
Yep.
Make one quick clarification as far as the number of units.
Yep.
Not, just for clarification, so it's 36 units, 72 bedrooms. Just it sounded, just to make sure
Okay.
that the public is clear.
Okay, but if hypothetically, if you had gone with 4 houses, it could have been 16 bedrooms. So, you know,
Understood,
the same rationale
understood,
could be applicable.
understood.
And I apologize, I wasn't clear about that. Now we're gonna open up to the public. What I'd like to do is, I guess a lot of you want to ask questions. Is there any one person you might have designated to ask questions or not?
I think there's a lot of different,
That's fine.
We have a presentation, a brief presentation, if that's possible, on behalf of the neighborhood.
How much time will you need? Nan?
5 minutes.
Okay, fine.
We have visuals, if that's okay to put up.
That's fine. Again, in the future, ma'am, you can just provide the visuals ahead of time.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, we usually, it's a rule.
Yeah.
Ask for presentations to be in our hands
Sure.
a week prior. So that was my only reservation.
Thank you very much for giving us time. Hi, neighbors.
And then again, as I said to the applicant, you can make your reservation, your presentation available. Because we saw on the screen in the future.
And we can email it to you.
Thank you.
Can we borrow your easel? Okay, yeah. It's gonna crush her.
That's okay, go ahead.
Can we do it so everybody can see it? Okay.
Does anybody want to move a little bit?
All right. So hi, I'm Katie Cameron Mason. I live at 205 Blackstone Street. I am a 3rd generation land and homeowner on Blackstone Street. We like to call ourselves the other side of Blackstone Street because we're a little bit different. In the audience with me, I have my father, Ed Cameron, my aunt and uncle, Nancy and Howard Drake, and my cousin. Nancy and Howard Drake and my cousin Rod are both abutters. The back of their field attaches to the land. I'm 3 houses down. When my family moved here, my grandparents moved here, it was again 70 years ago. They were the only house on Blackstone Street. I just want to briefly get into the land. As you can see here, is all of this purple is rare and endangered species. As a science teacher and someone who knows every inch of that 240 acres, this is where I grew up. This is our love as a family. As you can see, the solar field is now taken up 20 acres. And now this proposed is another 8 acres or so of development. Where am I going to- So, because it's agricultural land, we've been held to a certain standard for 70 years. We are concerned about having this much density and even having townhouses on the land. 4 homes, I don't think you would have the audience that you have here now. So with 36 townhomes being added from Blackstone Street from 126 to North Street, it will increase that population by 30%. So we are trying to protect that land, including those wetlands. We grew up protecting those wetlands. We've ice skated on those wetlands. We talked about that last night. Those are incredibly important to us. And like I said last night at the conservation meeting, they don't look like much driving by. The field doesn't look like much driving by. That is a part of our history in this town, and it's really important to us. We all know each other. We check in on each other. We help each other during storms. We wave to each other. We all care about each other. So to think about 36 townhomes coming in of a brand new population, it's a little terrifying for us. We're going to ask that you not permit the special permit. Okay. So based on the criteria, the effect on the range of available housing choice, this does not increase the housing choice because there are already 108 townhomes going up in Locust. We feel that single family homes would be better to identify, to help with housing needs in town, especially to increase the families in town. So that includes C and D. The service to current Bellingham residents, we need more single family homes. This will be a very negative impact on the natural environment that has existed in our neighborhood, especially ground and surface water quality and level. This will greatly impact traffic safety and congestion. This will very much affect our water supply. Many of us already have low water pressure, so we will have to probably install pumps at our own cost. Right now, they're saying that with the 36 townhomes, it will be using 8,000 gallons of water. However, this is only 6,000 more gallons when there is an option of 4 houses. I don't know how that math works out, but it's certainly going to be more than 8,000 gallons of water they're going to be using with 36 townhomes. It will certainly impact our visual environment through preservation. This is a field, it's more of a rural field down there. It is not consistent with existing development in the area. It is mostly single family homes. This will alter the neighborhood and the surrounding neighborhoods forever. This is something we can't take back. We have abided by the agricultural designation and cared for these lands going on now with my children 4 generations. This land is incredibly important to us. So we ask, what can we do as neighbors and as residents to prevent this special permit from going through? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Gentleman in the middle.
Jake Fad, 131 North Street. I've lived there for 30 years now. One of my big fears too is my well, because it goes low, and now if we have all these other things happening, I'm afraid that my well's not going to be working as it should. Also, the traffic study, I believe it was done in August, if I'm correct. That's not the time to do a traffic study, is August. We actually called the police department in Mendon and Bellingham, and what their traffic report says and what our traffic and what the actual police say are 2 totally different things. I walk that street every day and it's not safe. Jim, I have a question for you. So does the planning board have the ability within the law to deny this development from going in?
The planning board has the authority to approve with conditions, or deny any special permit that's before them.
Okay, so this is definitely under a special permit.
That's correct. This is a special permit request.
So I think what you're gonna find with most people here is, and I did this myself, is I moved to that area because I knew it was 2 acres only. And I love to hike, as I'm sure most people here do. I love the woods. And this is like putting an oil tanker in a lake. It's not what the neighborhood is like. It's not what so many people who grew up. I look at Mrs. Dunn. How many years have you been in this town?
Over 50.
Over 50 years. It's not what this neighborhood should be. And we need to protect open land in Bellingham. We shouldn't be putting 36 units in a small area when we have all of these other condos going up everywhere. It's not what the the vision of the town should be, and that's what we need to do as a planning board and as citizens. We need a vision, and the vision shouldn't be to stuff these condos or townhouses into a tiny area. And we look to you as our planning board to be the leaders in this and to say, we're not going to do something to this, because you also have the fiduciary responsibility of making sure that our real estate does not go down because we have 36 townhomes in our neighborhood. So I thank you for thinking of this and outside the box and knowing that the turnout you see here today is because we care, and we care not only about our neighborhood, but about Bellingham.
Thank you, and we appreciate that.
I'm also a
Can you tell your name and
resident,
address?
I'm sorry, Phyllis Dunn, 204 Blackstone Street.
Thank you.
Okay. I've been a resident in Bellingham for over 50 years. And I have seen houses built. They built Saddleback Hill. They built houses opposite mine on that side of the road. They built houses beyond mine. The people have not ever objected to a normal house lot and somebody building a house on it. And we expected, you know, in time that they would, at some point, build down to the end of the road. I can tell you firsthand, I was told 5 years ago by the people that live across the street from the land that they had a certain price in mind they were going to sell that land for. And as many times as they tried to sell it, they couldn't. They had to have a developer come in and they had to be allowed to build X amount of units in order to justify paying that price to that resident. Well, obviously, somewhere along the line, they've met the price. And of course, instead of putting in 4 or 5 legally, legal lots, what I call legal lots, reasonable, they want to jam all that in. Our neighborhood is a neighborhood, and it's got enough traffic as it is, but it's still a residential area. If you put those houses in, it will change the whole effect of that neighborhood. It's gonna turn into, Blackstone Street's gonna become another 126. I feel bad for people that live on 126, but that was there probably before the houses were. And I just can't help but hope that people in town moved here, probably for the same reason we did. We moved out of the city and came here because we had a little bit of space, we had grass, and we had a reasonable price for a house that we could actually afford. I have no objection to them building that in that area. But to allow them to come in for one, whatever it is, individual or corporation or whatever, to meet a certain price so that they can have this much profit at the cost of all of those houses and all of those people, doesn't even just affect us, it does affect North Street. And it's like you're taking parts of the town that you should be proud of and turning it into just a dump, really. I mean, and again, if they want to build in places where it's appropriate to put that many units, fine. This is in the middle of a residential area. And it's going to just create so many traffic problems. The only reason to build that many units in that land is for somebody to make money. That's not a reason to approve it. You have to look at the character of the area, the neighborhood, the people that have lived there all these years, people that will live there in the future. And I just hope to God that you leave the zoning or come up with a reasonable amount of acreage that has to be used to build units, not what is proposed now.
Thank you.
At Cassia, 127 North Street. We live like right where the road would be coming out onto North Street. And I just wanted to bring up Linda Way, the development that was done 12 years ago. That was first, gonna be 36 cluster homes on that piece of land. And there was gonna be 4 driveways coming out right on North Street, right across from the road that they would be putting in. The planning board and the safety officer and the engineer voted that those 4 driveways along this area could not come out because it's not safe. You're coming up this hill from an intersection here. The traffic engineer said 40 was the speed in a 25-mile-an-hour area.
There's definitely concerns about traffic along the road, there were plans for multiple points of egress and entry, and they had to do them. They were.
And then the planning board emphasized that North Street is unsafe. There's not enough being done because it's a popular road. I did my fact checking, reached out to Bellingham Police and Mendon Police. So from the intersection at Blackstone Street to Bait Street, because once you're in that corridor, you can't like move around. Motor vehicle stops we have just for 2022, 233. We have 17 accidents. Now in the history, we've been there 20 years.
Yeah.
In that exact location, right here where that road would go in, we've had a life flight. Car flew through the air and hit a tree. We had a car flip over in that exact area. There's been in the history 4 fatalities on the
That's
road
what then.
since we've done them. It's people drive so fast, like even I pull out, I get tailgated and passed on the road.
As a butters though, our house, we had to put this plan together because their plan, we couldn't tell where our house was in relation.
So we're literally,
And we're
we're
looking,
right here.
yeah, we're right here. And we're not talking about very dense floors. And, they're clear cutting. And we've got a patio 15 feet from our rock wall. And without a retention wall against it. That's 70 feet from my back deck, my bedroom. I live, where we live, it's our privacy. And if this gets clear cut, we're gonna be looking at a field of condominiums. I know there's Article 24095, I think, for buffer zones for major residential
Mhm.
developments. This doesn't consider that. That's something you have. But,
Okay.
so those are some of our concerns.
And then the other last question I have for maybe Jim could help answer this. Because I did like the fact checking on the 4 lots, the preliminary plan was done on May 18th. May 25th is when the article was passed to remove the townhomes. And then it was 9 months later when Raven Homes put down the plan for the townhouses. And in MGL law, chapter 40A, section 6, it says if a definitive plan or a preliminary plan followed within 7 months. I didn't know, because this was within 9 months, if we're within the realm with that bylaw.
Can you address that? I think you addressed it earlier. Can you just clarify?
Yeah, absolutely. So I appreciate the research. That's really astute. This application is further on in that section under it's the same section 40A, section 6, but referencing an 81P plan. So it's slightly different than the preliminary and definitive subdivision plans. And so that gives 3-year time frame there. So it is slightly different, but nevertheless, town council is still vetting all the different aspects of this as well, and we'll report back to the planning board.
So we are looking at that too.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, then like to tell you this other side of it.
Hi, Eric Schmidt, 75 North Street, my wife Joan. We've been residents since 1999. We are 1 lot away from the corner of North and Blackstone Street. Comments, I absolutely agree with, destroys the character of the community. Everywhere we walk is single family homes. We have been witness to multiple accidents at North and Blackstone Street. The visibility is horrible. Our kids have been in an accident there. Adding 2 more entrances. It just seems like will absolutely add some traffic, and I didn't realize there was a preliminary report up on the website. I noticed at the beginning that said there would be no traffic impact. Absolutely don't agree. Fourth Street is typically as a road is not kept in great condition. We've talked to DPW about it numerous times. They won't limit the traffic. They won't limit the speed. They won't put speed bumps. Blackstone Street is in terrible condition, and that's without any additional traffic. Also, no sidewalks, not even safe for new residents to come in there. On top of all the other objections, which I fully agree with. Thanks, neighbors, for showing up. I didn't realize we could submit emailed comments. I can follow it up with that. But I would agree, four homes might keep within the character and keep all the volume of people and traffic down. This amount seems greedy and just not at all appropriate for the location. And the safety especially is just incredibly concerning with, almost 20 years of the town saying they can't even improve conditions for the current residents.
Yeah, on this side of the room. Dan, you go.
319 Blackstone Street,
Your name?
Dan Houston. You mentioned the water situation, DiMartino.
Yes.
I can tell you I've lived there since 2000. My water pressure is terrible.
Okay.
And any addition to that line is gonna make it worse. So I have a great concern about that. Obviously, safety, number one, everybody that's spoken about safety, that road is horrible. Blackstone Street, North Street are both a disaster. Any more entrances, exits, just gonna make it that much worse.
Okay. Nah, okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
How you doing?
You doing fine? How are you?
Hey, Rod Cameron, I live at 213 Blackstone Street. It's my aunt, this is my cousin. We've been part of this street for years and years. We abut the proposed development, that field that is behind there. Previously, we had a right of access to that backfield, and with this proposed development, we will no longer have access to that backfield. That was an agreement between my grandparents and the previous owners, the Canoyas. So I just want that to be. Yeah, I can no longer get access because of the wetlands.
Okay.
That divide my property. I have some drawings here if you want to take a look at.
You can leave those or provide them to Amy and we'll be added to the record. Anyone else?
Yeah, we've been using that field for over 20 years.
Okay.
There's the field right here.
Yes, ma'am.
It's Jane Vicky and I'm on 25 Stephen Road. I just want to comment, I think it's sort of a repeat of what some of your members of the planning board have said, and certainly Phyllis. I've been in the house that I live in now for over 60 years. When those first houses on Stephen Road were built. And the neighborhood has just grown and developed over the years in many, many ways. North Street was totally woodland. Blackstone Street ended into the sand lots where my kids would go play. So Maddie's Way, Linda's Way, all of those homes have been built and they're beautiful. And they enhance our neighborhood. But I think it's very important to know that this is a residential neighborhood. It is not a neighborhood that is conducive or even the sort of thing where townhouses fit in. Both aesthetically, environmentally, it's just sort of an oddity in that whole location. Residents walk, they dog walk, they run, they bike. They're in the neighborhood constantly. You go out any day and you're going to see residents walking around and enjoying the area. And it is no longer safe. You can't go onto Blackstone Street very carefully. Certainly, on a bike, there's no bike lanes, there's no sidewalks. So you have to be careful, but you still enjoy the whole area. You sort of feel safe there. And I just think residential homes, certainly, we've seen them develop and they fit in beautifully. And I'm not quite sure what happened to the 4 homes that were initially proposed and why that went either way. But I think that that certainly would fit in. But the traffic would have to be attended to. And when you do a traffic study on Blackstone Street, you're either going to have sidewalks or speed bumps or stuff or signage, because the cars that beeline from 126 through North Street are at 40 miles an hour. You take the elbow at Saddleback Hill and, you know, it's just a very dangerous intersection. People are coming at you in the middle of the road and you have to kind of sideswipe to get around the corner. Unless you're driving 25 miles an hour. And I know Blackstone on this side, from the high school all the way down, is zoned 25 miles an hour, 30 miles tops. And that's the way the other area has to be done in order to protect, you know, the residents and, or again, cut down the accidents. So I just, you know, I hope you'll take that into consideration as you make your decision.
Thank you. Behind her.
My name's Yvonne Mackey. I live on 26 Stephen Road. And this also impacts us a great deal because I'm one of the people in that neighborhood. My husband has lived there for 42 years, sorry. And when we try to walk, or first of all, when I drive anywhere, I have to pull right down the road a little way onto Blackstone Street. You know, so all of my traffic, everywhere I go has to be on Blackstone Street before I can get anywhere else. So when I'm on the other end, down where this development is scheduled to take place, when I come from Milford, which is frequently, or even in the other direction from the Rhode Island, Woonsocket area, and of North Street that turns on Blackstone, I signal so far ahead as I'm approaching the turn to Blackstone Street and slowing down. And people invariably, I'm pretty good at timing this too. And I always know someone's going to just about clip me as I'm pulling into that sharp turn onto the road. I'm telling you how many close calls I've had, and I'm watching for it in the rear view mirror the whole time. So the traffic thing really is a huge issue for me. And when I saw the plan, we were lucky to find them on our mailboxes one day, all of us. That's the only reason I knew about the change from 4 houses to the townhome units that were being explored. But when we looked at that, we looked at the egress for North Street, the little plan somebody had for the additional egress onto North Street. And it's just so close, as somebody said, to the other intersection already that it just looks like it would be even more dangerous, in my opinion, just looking at it and having driven that area so many times over and over. And as far as walking in the neighborhood goes, I'm a senior citizen now, so I like to walk and stay in shape and move it and shake it and everything. But it's already difficult on Blackstone Street. There are no sidewalks or anything. People are using it as a cut through, as they said. I'm worried about my dear friend here who's out there walking on Blackstone Street all the time, and I worry about her. We have to go in the other direction. I'm worried about the traffic impact, the water, so many things that have already been said. Thank you to the neighbors that prepared all of that stuff. I'm so appreciative as a resident of the area. Thank you so much. And I'm glad that you're considering so many of these things. Thank you.
It's Frank Felsman. I'm at 195 Blackstone Street. We've been there for just about 40 years. We're on agricultural land. We have horses. We ride our horses on Blackstone Street. My family, 4 daughters, and myself and my wife regularly have done that. Yeah, there are no sidewalks. We rode them right down the middle of the street. And naturally, you know, before the far end of Blackstone Street was complete, before Linda Way was complete, it was just after they did Sharon Road. So a lot of those developments added traffic, which is fine. I mean, it's a natural progression. You have to expect that. Certainly, residential housing belongs in a residential neighborhood. I agree with that. You add a huge amount of cars on a road. It changes the character of what we have. I mean, we moved here for the agricultural land. We moved here so we could have horses. It's just, that's what you do, right? We ride out the trails. We thank the people that live in the neighborhood that, allow us to ride on their property. We've ridden in those fields plenty of times. I taught my daughters how to ride there. So it's not like the Camerons aren't saying, that they're part of the neighborhood and they've grown on the land. Well, yeah, we have. So kind of odd, but yeah. And by the way, thank you for whoever sent that letter, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't realize that this was happening. Thank you.
Thank you. On the right-hand side with paper in his hand.
I'm Bill Kirkhoff. I live at 289 Blackstone Street. You asked us not to be redundant. We're all being redundant, but I have to speak up. I live on the corner of North Street, Blackstone Street, and Old Town Road goes behind our house. We're right there with a triangle lot right there. We're gonna be butters, just like Todd and Christine. Literally, it's gonna look like about 60 feet or so from there, the deck on one of the condos that's behind our property to our deck, which I think is pretty close. Same thing, there's not a lot of thick vegetation there. Echo the traffic concerns. I read all the statistics. I went through this report. I know it's all measured and all that stuff, and maybe some of the numbers really don't say that people are driving that fast. I was shocked to say the speed that they were driving. But we live in an in-law up on top of the garage right there. We're right next to, more than anyone in here. We're right above North Street, so we see it all the time. There's road rage on that road like all the time. People that drive the speed limit, the fast drivers come up behind them and they beep at them and they make a scene at the intersection when they maybe make a left turn or something like that, because they're so upset and raged that how dare you go the speed limit. If you look at the report, first of all, I know we're gonna have Ben Epps come the next meeting. But I do have issues with the report as well, because yes, it was done in August. In the report, it says that the traffic volume at that time was 4.9% greater than the average. But where they took that from was counters on Route 495. That's where they took it from. So of course, in the summertime, you get lots of vacationers coming up 495, going up north, coming down south or whatever. So of course, the traffic's going to be more on a highway than it is in that neighborhood. So they're using data that's really not appropriate. Obviously, in August, I think everybody would agree, people are on vacation. There's not as many people commuting and all that stuff. So yes, and I think it's, the number of trips that they're saying are going to be added at the peak hours, I think is wrong. Because they have like 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. And if you just look at the data around here, it's like at least minimum 2 hours. Nowadays, commutes are spread out, right? Everything's different than the way it used to be. But minimum 2 hours on each end. So I think those numbers are wrong. If you look at the report, they got the speed report. So on North Street, on those 2 days, 3 cars going 55 to 60, 2 cars going 50 to 55, 41, 45 to 50, 107, 70, I'm sorry, 40 to 45, and 876 cars were doing 35 to 40. If they were doing 40, that's 15 over, so it's bad area. I also just, last thing, that land, the natural heritage land it's a shame to put, 36 units on there, and they are shoehorned in there. I know why they're doing it. They're doing it because natural heritage people want to conserve land, and maybe the Conservation Commission, whoever, they want to conserve the open land, right? So they say, oh, cluster it in here. It's just too much. I mean, if, we don't really want 4 townhomes in there either, but better than 12. It's just way too much. It quite frankly looks ugly to me. When I look at it, I think they should pluck out at least 4 to 6 townhouses right out of there, because they don't even look good. They got some of them backing up against the other, but that's neither here nor there. So those are my comments. It's, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Stephanie Barsley. I live on Linda Way, 18 Linda Way.
newer to the area, but I appreciate everybody who's already put stuff. Well, I'll add, I have a 6-year-old, and so we're new to kindergarten this year and new to Bellingham schools. It's, utterly terrifying. The bus stop is right there on Linda and North Street, and it's really, scary, because I see the cars whip by and the bus, and that's the only added thing I'm gonna add about the traffic. I mean, it's nothing new that people haven't said, but also as a parent, it's really hard to think about adding in all this traffic and then to outlet a street right near our bus stop. That's scary. And then when all these accidents happen that everyone so diligently researched, they reroute everybody on Linda Way. So then like there's certain times, like I know, like I don't know if our neighbors notice, but like there'll be times that they'll just suddenly, like there's so many cars just whipping through. It's a little street. But that's all I wanted to add because
Thank you.
In Blackstone Street,
Any neighbors?
Erica Wolf, Stevenello. We actually own 2 lots, so we are the property directly in front of, the access to this proposal. I'm not gonna repeat everything, but I am just gonna state high level. Zoning, don't understand why we changed the zoning. Density, it just doesn't conform. Traffic and safety, I'm coming back to that one because I do have 2 topics to add. And then the water concerns. For traffic and safety, as she just pointed out, I used to walk to school. We've been there over 50 years. I walk to school. I can't even get the mail from my 87-year-old father without taking my life into it. The mailbox was on the other side of the street. I happened to be videotaping 6 beautiful years in that field just now before I came, 517. And one of them started to contemplate thinking about crossing the street. And I was videoing it because I thought, oh, this is so beautiful. The deer crossed. Other 5, 2 of whom were babies, decided, okay, it's a free for all, we're gonna run for it. They almost all got wiped out by a speeding car right then and there. And I have it all on video. The cars are flying by there. You're gonna need to do some serious infrastructure to the streets, to the sidewalks. A truck and a car cannot pass one another on North Street in sections or on Blackstone Street. So you're gonna have to think about all of that, and those will be costs to the town. We're also gonna need a light, I think more than one. One at the corner of North Street going on to 126. And then right at the corner where North Street and Blackstone come, something needs to be done. I mean, you've heard all the statistics. So Dick defines it, I'm very concerned for safety purposes, for little children and for the elderly. It's turning into a very congested, condensed area, and this will only add to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The person in the back of the room. Just 1 second. Anyone have their hand up? On the Zooming? No, anyone Zooming have any questions? I don't see anyone with their hands up. Okay,
I think that's the cursor.
okay.
We made that mistake before.
My name's Janet Gopi. I'm at 151 North Street. And I just wanted to piggyback on the safety concern. I also have young children. I've called the police numerous times when cars have gone around the school bus. And the middle school and high school does not provide busing to anyone on North Street or Blackstone. If they do want to take the bus, it's a few $100. So theoretically, these kids are all walking to school. It's just another big concern having kids, and if any kids move into these townhomes, they're gonna try to walk up Blackstone to get to school. You don't want to see a kid get hurt. Another huge concern.
Thank you. All right, wrap it up. Anyone else?
I'd like to ask, what is planned for 40B? Are there any 40B in there? Isn't that low income housing?
Just 1 second, Jim. can you
What will the
address that?
price point be? How's it gonna affect our?
Just 1 moment, ma'am. So we can nip this in the bud, so to speak. Can you address that?
Sure, there's a couple different aspects to, I think what the resident is referring to is the affordable housing options. So there is a 40B provision, that's not in play here. However, there is inclusionary housing, which is a town required 10% affordable housing. So 10% of the units would be required to have some aspect of deed restrictions to 80% area median income, which right now for a family of four, I believe is approximately $81,000 a year you need to make around. So it's not the affordable that we used to think about for certain. But the rest would be required to be market rate.
So the 40B is not on the table. It is inclusionary housing. The intent of inclusionary housing is to provide the opportunity for people who live and work in town, firemen, teachers, policemen, to purchase a home in the town where they work.
Right,
It is not 40B, it's entirely different.
okay.
Right, so, you know, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but 40B is often, I want to get that clarified.
Me too.
It's only inclusionary housing. Depending on how we move forward, going down the road.
And the values of our houses? I mean, I recently got my tax bill and was quite shocked at the value you guys think my house is.
I think it's going up everywhere.
Right, but when they do a market analysis, they do it against what has sold in your area. If what has sold in your area are houses that are $200,000 a townhouse, now my $500,000 home is being weighed against that. So my value that I'm gonna get in a current market analysis is gonna be lower. So I'm a little worried about what that's gonna do.
I'm gonna go on a limb here.
I
I'm
didn't-
gonna go on a limb. I don't think these townhomes will sell for $200,000. When they go through. Okay, I know I'm assuming something that we've not agreed on. But I can assure you, it's not gonna be $200,000.
Well, I don't know.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. And I like that it was.
Cody Spencer.
Over to you, Mike.
Cody Spencer, 244 Blackstone Street. I've lived there since 95. The town put a easement in between my property and the property up the street for water runoff. Last year, it's been as dry as there wasn't any water whatsoever. And I just don't understand what this is gonna do to either help or go against that
Okay.
issue that we've had. And just like everyone else said, traffic, somebody just took out the pole at the end of my driveway, not even 2 months ago, speeding, not paying attention, whatever they were doing, and it's just some concerns that I think everybody else has voiced, so I'll save your ears, but
Okay.
I don't think it fits in with what the neighborhood
I'll
looks
direct
like.
comments in a minute. I do have an answer for you and other people. Last question of the evening.
Yeah, Don DePardo, 178 Blackstone Street. I just wanted to add to what the woman said about getting the mail. On Blackstone Street, in that area anyways, the mailboxes are on the odd side and people on the even side have to cross the street to get it. I live right across the street from Saddleback Hill Road. When I go for my mailbox, people come whipping around that corner. I at least have some room to get off the street. But I notice up closer to this property, people go across the street, they can't even get off the road. So I don't know what you do when you get your mail. It's gotta be pretty dang.
On behalf of the board and other people can speak, I want to thank you.
Does Jim, for sure there's no questions, just can we double check one more time? Jim, are we good on Zoom?
If anybody on Zoom wishes to speak now, you're certainly welcome to unmute and address the
I don't
board.
see any hands.
I don't see any hands up.
Good.
I want to thank you all for participating. This will be a long process. I want your continued participation. The applicant has served, okay? Before I ask other members to speak, What I would like to see done initially is I'd like to have the safety officer come in a future meeting. And Don DiMartino. At a future meeting. And then if we could update a traffic study of our own. I'd like to turn it over to the board.
I just want to thank you all for coming. Probably one of the greatest turnouts I think I've seen in a community in this town. And it's pretty impressive how close all you people are. And I know exactly what you're saying. I live on Payne Street, which is a death trap to begin with. And I mean, I know how many, poles you could put up. We put up one a week on Payne Street. I'm gonna take all that under consideration and I don't think this fits this neighborhood whatsoever, my personal opinion. And I just want to thank you all again for coming.
Yeah. Also wanted to say thank you to the public. Really appreciate everyone's input. And one thing to keep in mind as well as moving forward, I assume if we haven't already initiated a peer review, we will after tonight. And for anyone who isn't familiar with the peer review process, basically the applicant has an engineer, both civil and traffic. And basically what happens is the town brings in a professional engineer, civil and traffic as well. And the applicants at the applicant's expense, and they're going to review the process as well and make sure that everything is in line. And I'm sure they're going to be at these meetings as well. So any comments that they come up with will be discussed as well, and they'll all be. But thank you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might add is just, there's a lot of themes to what people have said in the room, and I strongly encourage the applicant to consider those themes there and take a look at the neighborhood in terms of its character, and then how this particular project fits in both the type of housing and the number of units that you're applying, because I really do think it is, as others have said, and as the audience have said, it is out of character and it's too dense. So I would, and I say that with keeping an open mind as it's a long process. And the only other thing I might suggest to the board to consider is that we often go on site visits to sort of see the lay of the land. Maybe that might be a good idea.
I think that definitely.
I'm sorry, I just want to make one comment.
No, ma'am,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll
go
do
ahead.
it
ma'am.
next week.
I mean, go ahead.
No.
No, ma'am, I'm all set. Go ahead.
Oh. The comment I wanted to make is, as I said, when I moved to Blackstone Street, there was one house beyond mine, and there were no other houses until you crossed North Street and it was an old farmhouse or whatever. There was never any objection when Saddleback Hill was built. There was never any objection when all the rest of my side of Blackstone Street was built. The builders came in and they looked at the neighborhood, and then they responded and kept the whole nature of the neighborhood. I know from my own, hearing it with my own ears, the person that owned that land wanted a certain price. And the only way he would get it, and he's a resident, he lives across the street, or he did at that time. And he said, the only way he would sell it is if this builder would meet their price. And all these years went by and nobody would meet the price. Well, guess what? They finally figured, we'll buy it, we'll get the town to change it. And please bear that in mind. This is truly a neighborhood. They want to put in houses that same as the rest. They can be bigger and better, but but don't throw this into the middle of a true neighborhood. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Anything else?
There's a lot of concerns that have been raised, and as the process goes forward, please stay involved. We're going to go through with our peer reviews. The traffic concerns are very concerning, and our peer review who works for the town will be looking at all of that. So their peer review, they've got a traffic study, our peer review. It'll probably be going through peer review, and at that point, our people will look at it as well and give us recommendations on the water and other things. You mentioned Mr. Martino and DPW.
Yes.
I did see the letter from him, but would it be wise to have them weigh in? The water pressure is something I've been on board for a while, and I haven't heard that yet. And giving a heads up that would be one of the topics. that
That's
we
fine.
would Certainly be asking.
What we can do is, we're probably gonna obviously extend this for another meeting. We will have, make sure he gets a draft of the minutes.
And I think we're gonna have to break up these meetings into topics
Yes.
and base the meeting agenda on the topics. And so we can do that moving forward.
I would, when that comes up, maybe you give them a, I don't know, this is a connection letter, I think.
We also want to address all the one.
The water issue, that is certainly not something I've heard on other projects as much. This is something that we definitely want to get involved with.
Nick?
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Throughout the process, definitely keep asking questions, ask questions about the process, the project, but also ask questions about what the planning board does, what they can do, and how everyone can kind of work together. I think it's eye-opening that there's everybody in here, from people that have been in the neighborhood for 30, 40, 50 years. There's also parents, there's people that just moved in. It's a sample of a little bit of everything that Bellingham has. We're definitely gonna consider that, and I thank everyone for coming out.
Mr. Chairman, can I have one more question?
You certainly can.
While I have you all here, how many people on wells? Wells. Well water. Okay. Thank you.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Before I speak, I see one hand.
My only question is, can you sort of give us a sense of the follow-up to this? Are you going to discuss this at the next planning
Yeah,
meeting,
we'll give you a
or how will we know?
We'll get to that in a moment, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I want to applaud all of you for coming here this evening. This town spoke 2 years ago, once a Jim, about the need not for townhomes. So we have a threshold you can't ignore based on what the townspeople want. The applicant does have a right to reserve his right moving forward. But the applicant has heard this evening from town residents. And there were concerns shared by the board. So I just want you to be aware of that. I would entertain a motion to ask for a peer review for engineering for the scope to be done. Do I have a second on that? Jim, do I need a second?
Yeah, if you're gonna ask for a motion, yeah, you should ask for a second. Thank
Do we have
you.
a second? For peer review, yes?
Yeah.
Yes, we do. Any discussion on the peer review? I'll also make sure traffic is involved. And Jim, how do we address the well water issue?
We could inquire about that with our peer review engineer, our civil engineer, and see if they have any recommendations.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
Jim, would you recommend including that within the scope? Or just reach out?
We can
to
have
them?
let's have a initial discussion and see if there's some opportunities there for some best practices or
Sure,
review.
sounds good.
So the motion was for engineering, but that would include traffic, stormwater,
Well water.
well water.
As well as, town water too.
Town water.
So,
Town water will be addressed by the DPW.
So the scope will be, it'll be traffic, civil, which will fall under stormwater, as well as the utilities, and then peer review for Conservation Commission, I think will be in unison with us. So.
Yes, it's a joint peer, it will be a peer review, and it'll be our typical review of the whole application as a whole. What has been presented, so they review everything comprehensively.
Yeah.
those items.
Favor?
Yes. Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Another person I would like to hear from, and I apologize for being over anxious here. You mentioned the shared septic. We'd like to get input from public health in the future, meeting, Board of Health. I would like to entertain a motion.
You have a question?
Can you just give me a moment, sir? A motion to continue this to the April 27th meeting.
Would April be? Second or already discussion? Are we gonna be getting one of the peer reviews back by then? I don't, right?
Is that realistic?
For April 27th, absolutely, we could have scope and peer review back by then.
That's 3 months away.
Okay, that's the answer. Feels like March.
Okay, sir.
I'd just like to ask a broader question about the way the rules work. I mean, one of the things you say that the applicant has the right to be able to build this.
They reserve their right.
But how does their application for 4 units of housing a couple of years ago translate into the right to build, all these condos?
If you address that, it comes down to a special permit. Go ahead.
Yes, and sorry, I think the discrepancy here is the right to build versus the right to apply for. There is no right to build. They have the right to apply for what is being proposed, and if the board agrees that they meet the standard, then they would have the right to build. But right now, we're in the process of even determining whether they meet the standards at all.
They reserve their right to apply. Excuse me. That was my mistake.
So continuation.
April 27th.
Aye.
So the next meeting will be April 27th. It'll be the second Thursday of April. Jim, it'll be draft night, by the way. So please participate. Get your neighbors to participate. I know it's a gentleman on the left-hand side, that they may want to add a letter to Amy. That will be added to the file as we move forward. I encourage you to do that as well. And again, I can't thank you enough for your participation this evening. Thank you very much.
Just one thing, we're still having a meeting, so if we didn't talk even outside, because we get really loud and talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amy called.
I know.
All right, it's after the fire.
No, thank you.
And maybe what with those neighbors, we get the presentation.
Yes, sure. Sorry, better.
Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Good night. The next meeting on the agenda is 152 Depot Street, modification discussion.
Welcome back.
Good evening, everybody.
Tim, can you give us an overview on this?
Absolutely. So before you this evening is probably a very familiar project to everyone. 152 Depot Street. This is an approved project from a previous submission. The request is to review a modification to determine whether or not it is a minor or major modification of the plan. I'll let the applicant review that, but ultimately the decision this evening for the board is if the board considers this a minor amendment, then it could, or minor modification, then it is a letter to the clerk identifying such and the letter to the file, and they can proceed. If it is determined to be a major modification, the applicant and developer would need to refile for a public hearing in order to seek approvals by this board.
Thank you.
Consultant as well.
Okay.
Oh, geez. I'll screen it now. There. Yeah.
Go up, there's a full house. Always a full house.
Yeah,
Not ever here from you.
I don't know why you left when you went forward.
Because they weren't here from me, that's why I'm.
Okay. Floor is yours, sir.
All right,
Why don't you introduce yourself?
absolutely. For the record, John Cusick with Bowler Engineering. Attorney Joe Antonellis is here over Zoom. And I believe we have something that's very simple and straightforward that I would like to present to the board. I guess simply put, we've gone through some VE changes on the site and have proposed two modifications, which frankly, I think are actually better for the project anyway. Essentially, change number one is we have an underground detention basin under the section of the parking lot. And then we had a septic system off to the side. We switched the two. We have an above ground detention basin instead of a below ground basin. Easier to maintain, they're more efficient. And we thought that made sense. The second proposed change was, if you recall, there was a lot of debate during the hearings about the sound wall that we proposed on the left side of the property. It needed to be a 17 high foot wall, 15 to 17 it varied. Strictly a wall. We thought it would be better to obviously keep the same height, but construct a berm with a smaller fence on top. So there's less maintenance, it's more aesthetic, and it will hold up. Same height, it'd actually be denser because it's earth as opposed to a fence. Those are the two changes. Building size, parking spaces, everything is the same with the exception of that. We have submitted the plans to your peer review consultant to review that, just to make sure the engineering calculations were all consistent and everything was above board. I believe you have a letter back from them saying that we've addressed all their comments and it's consistent with the original application. With that, I'd be happy to go into more detail, but that's simply what we're looking to do.
So what will the neighbors see different? The detention basin, are they gonna see that, what's different? As far as visually,
So visually,
you have a drawing or
yeah, if, honestly, I don't remember how to share the screen here, so I can go.
do we have one in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, there was a field where the basin used to be. with a leach field. And you can't plant over that area and clear out around it. So now instead of a field, it'll be a compression.
Can you tell us what, gauge that would be?
C401 is probably the best representation.
Yeah, or C 701 as well, we can speak to that.
I guess my concern is, is anybody can anybody see a difference between?
There's really no difference between the before and the after. One question that came up, or one request that came up after we submitted initially was, you'll notice at the back of the basin is requested by staff that we add a row of trees at the back end of the basin. We didn't have that previously, but they asked if we can add that there, which we've added on the plan. So I'd argue that there's actually better screening now, because once people saw where the trees were cut down for the initial development, it was asked if we could add trees in that area. So this plan added, I don't know the exact count, but probably 30 or so of those green giant arborvitaes right at the back.
What's the caliber of those?
It would be the same as printed during the original plan.
I don't think there's any calendar.
Yeah, those are height. It's typically a 5 to 6 foot height is what we typically propose. And those green giants are, they're very, very fast growing and they're green year round. Once they establish, they typically grow about 3 feet a year. So
That's so the detention basin is behind the building. No one's gonna be able to see it from Depot Street, right?
No, it's right up at there's 2 basins. One's behind the building. That one has not changed.
That has not changed.
Right, the basin that is being added is next to the access road. That's where it was previously cleared out for the. Yes, that is correct. That's originally where we had the septic system, so that area was cleared out, and there was a septic system there. So now there's a detention basin there.
Can you see it from the street?
Yes. Yeah, as you would have the field that was cleared for the septic system. It's not a structure, it's not a building, it's cleared, essentially cleared land. What we've done behind that to actually provide buffering that's, I guess, in excess of what was there previously under the approved plan, was you added a row of trees on the backside of that, which we didn't have on the backside of the septic system. I think now that the trees were cleared, people got a better view, and the request came that we add those, and we've agreed to do that.
You make sure those are as mature as possible, those trees,
I'm sorry, what's that?
as mature as possible when they go in.
Yes, yep, we can certainly do that, and the spacing, they're right up against each other too. So it's gonna go.
trees.
You can find some of them.
Bring them in my yard.
Yeah, do you have any questions?
No, really, the other thing you did mention was the, berm now higher with the fence.
Yes, so again, if you look on sheet 701, it's probably the best representation. Previously, it was just a wall that went up, 17 feet high,
I
which,
wasn't a fan of that at the beginning, but it said, hey, the other building, what's for that kind of money?
yeah.
Go ahead.
And it's just, if you look at some of those, they're, you have to maintain them and it's less likely.
yeah.
So with this, I guess probably the best way to describe it, when you drive down Maple, you've got if you're heading towards 126 from the opposite direction, Franklin side, you'll notice the berm on the left hand side and the other trees on top of it. That's
I think that's a good improvement there. I don't have a problem with it.
So one thing, but nice vest, by the way.
Thank you. Very nice in your end as well.
Excuse me. I think we're bordering on conflict of interest.
For the record, they're wearing the same clothes.
That's fine. It's.
They're engineers.
Yeah. Now after embarrassing myself. The limited disturbance on that berm, did that encroach closer to the property line at all, or is that around the same footprint of development as previously? I know obviously a wall is gonna take up less space.
Yeah, it goes out a little bit further. I don't have the exact dimensions, but it goes out a little bit further to get the berm up there.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree that, I mean, obviously, I'm not a big fan of, berm, but I think it's better than a wall, and, I mean, it's gonna be seeded with a meadow mix, I assume.
Correct. It'll be seeded and then planted on top. So frankly, it would just look more natural, and I think that was something that came up at the hearings, how everything would look.
Absolutely. Do you think that the applicant might be amendable to adding a few, like maybe just a slight row of arborvitae's or something along the toe of that slope on the abutter side?
We could do that. I don't know if that would do much though, because it would just be hiding the meadow, right? That's why you put them on the top, because you want to make sure we're hiding
The building, I get that.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing that I would be concerned with is, I mean, if it's gonna be a meadow mix, I'm not overly concerned. I'm just saying even shielding the berm might be helpful from the perspective of the butters. I understand, meadow mix, it's gonna look okay, but I would think that would be good.
You still have the tree line, the existing tree line between there and the one house diagonal to there.
And if I recall, based on the site walk, that corner, it is a really nice vegetated area. There's not a lot of underbrush throughout the entire development. So,
Yeah, we have the forested area that's not underbrush.
yeah, that would be my suggestion. It's not a game changer for me. It's just something that might.
Just along the back of the corner at the neighbor where, I forget the woman's name, but I know exactly the house at the corner. She spoke a few times.
As a matter of fact, it doesn't have to run along the entire toe slope, maybe just the corner.
Yeah, the corner is I think the view you were.
To reduce your view.
Exactly. I think
We
that.
can add some arborvitae's on that, left corner.
Okay, and then as far as the stormwater basin goes, I know I may or may not have brought up my dislike for underground infiltration systems for
I recall.
industrial uses, so a surface basin to me, I think is just, it's much better. That area was gonna be open anyway, because it was septic. So, I did notice that it seems like the septic system shrunk in size a bit. It looked like that from the first plans, which it might just be a different scale that I was. looking
Yeah, it
at.
might have been scale, but the same flow and
Okay,
flow rates and all that. It should be the same size.
yep, all right. No, I mean, I personally am a fan of getting the infiltration systems out from underground and making it a surface basin, and I'm interested to hear, I did see the peer review, and I know Dominic's on. He might be able to discuss a little bit too, what the peer review was. But anyway. Yeah.
So with regard to the detention basin, is there any additional clearing at all in that area? Do you think?
It goes out slightly. It might be. It's at a little bit of an angle. It might be 15 or 20 feet or so beyond that, but it's essentially, I'd say 80–90% of it is the same.
Same dimension?
Yeah.
And when you say you're gonna plant a row of arborvitae's behind it, are you meaning towards Dunkin' Donuts or towards the road?
On the opposite side of the road, so essentially. When you look at sheet 701.
What's that?
Yeah, it's hard to see on the plan, but it's those that are.
Yeah, so those are. But the road is on the other side, right?
The road is on the other side, that is correct.
So what is the back, what does that get you? Putting the arborvitae's in the back?
A larger area of planting, frankly, like if you're in the front, it's smaller, you'd only have. Probably a quarter of the area to plant them, to look up front. front to the left of the road as you're coming into it. We've already got plantings there, right at the entry.
Yeah.
And then there's just a really small area left between the plantings that are already proposed and the property line.
Yep.
So probably about 25% of the area, we thought we'd get a bigger bang for the buck, frankly, going on the backside.
So I'm looking at the plan, it's to the right. I don't know the direction, but it's to the right on the plan of the detention basin, there's that area, that's undisturbed.
I honestly don't recall, but it's not our property. That goes.
Oh, you're right on the line.
Yeah, yep, that's, I believe it's wooded. I'm not 100% sure, but actually, I'm looking at the tree line on the plan. That area is wooded.
You can raise your hand, you agree with that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to chime in. That was a comment that I made to the applicant regarding adding some additional greenery along that edge there. Looking at the satellite imagery, I mean, the view shed of the dunks was or the distribution center, excuse me, was what could be seen from that location. So I thought that would be an appropriate location for that screening.
I really agree.
For the back, where they have it on the plan.
Exactly, because in that direction at that angle, very likely could be some of the parking for the trailers and those types of activities.
And you don't think for on the side, so if you're looking at the plan on the right of the detention basin, that doesn't need any additional screening, do you think?
So on that side is the driveway.
Well, that
mean-
would be the left then.
Right, so if you're
If
looking
I'm
at it from
looking-
Depot Street on the left side, that would be the driveway access road for them. I thought this was more of a priority, but certainly a few more along there, I'm sure couldn't hurt.
All right, yeah, the more you can do to add trees, that would be very helpful, I think.
Yeah, yep, I agree. We're gonna have on the back of the basin, we'll add some around the front for the other turn there. But on the other side of the basin, that's butting up against the wooded area that's between the two driveways.
Okay.
So it wouldn't really
Wouldn't help too much. All right,
If you could do something, it's to be appreciated. I know it wouldn't do much, but doing something to be an improvement.
and then with regard to the berm, so two things, for years, planning board has been made fun of and ridiculed for the berm that's in front of the Victory Building. The one that you described with the trees on top, because it looks. When it was proposed, in my mind, the trees were gonna go up the berm, at least in my mind, I didn't think they were just gonna stick out at the top. So I know that we've learned the hard way that doesn't work. And I understand that this is different in that it's not so prominent. And it to the, what would be the left of you looking at the plan with it woods. That would be one issue. Second issue is, I don't believe that berm was whether the sound attenuation is the same. I have no basis to know.
It definitely is. That much I can assure you, that the density of the soil. When you do the sound studies, that the wall has to be of a certain PSI. But when you have earth, that's greater than a piece of wood going through there, or whatever the barrier might be. That assure you that, yeah, that will buffer sound more than fence would. And to the landscaping, I'm happy that you see it's a pretty dense landscaping we have on there. If the board feels as though it'd be better suited, because that's not used for sound attenuation, the fence and the berm, the sound attenuation, the plantings was just visual. If the board feels as though they would be better suited on the down slope side of that, we could certainly do that too. I just thought it would be better on the top.
No, and again, so I'm not an engineer. I don't know any of this stuff. So that's what I'm struggling with. In my mind, the more of plantings, the more trees, the more of whatever you can add to this particular area. But Jim, and I hope what you're saying is accurate, but do you have any reason we need to verify the sound attenuation at all through a peer, that wasn't peer review, but if that's so obvious that we don't need to do it, then so be it. But I don't know, if I feel
Can I interject
comfortable.
one moment? Would it help if we heard from a peer reviewer?
If you looked at the sound, but I read the peer review as the correlator to the storm.
I understand, but if we get its opinion.
Yeah.
Dominic?
Good evening, Dominic Rinaldi with BSC Group for the record. You're asking about the sound attenuation of the berm versus a wall? Is that so?
Yes.
So as the member mentioned, we were not asked to look at the sound attenuation of that. Generally speaking, though, I do agree with John. You know, a dense berm, you know, will sort of reflect and absorb more sound than a wall, you know, or at least as much. So I mean that would be my experience.
But so I guess my question is this of an adequate size and shape and all of that stuff that I have no idea, and apparently. You do.
Yeah, that as I said, we definitely did not look at.
And so with that point though, the reason why we didn't require or ask for the peer review of that is because it was of the same square footage and footprint and meaning height wise. So I didn't think it was necessary, but if the board does, we certainly can make that ask.
No, I don't want to make more work where it's not necessary, because again, I don't know the answer to this question, so if I just don't know.
The square footage is the same issue.
That's what it was, the height that was very clear. Again, we had it at a certain height we thought was adequate. And remember your peer reviewer had said back, well, if you want to be extra cautious, we can go to this particular height. So it's typically the height that's what blocks it, and the density. That's why they specified it had to be a certain PSI fencing, and the earth will be greater than that. And where the earth doesn't go up high enough, you can have a fence there. So there is still a small fence in a small area, but it's mostly earth.
Yeah, so just do that and add 20 arborvitae.
I think what might make sense if we can to avoid the comment that you're referring to, it actually might look better is kind of take it and have some on the top, some on the side. We can kind of like sprinkle it so it doesn't look like a wall of trees on the top of the berm. It may look more natural if you put some in the berm, some at the bottom.
Yeah, so that would address my.
Yeah, exactly, kind of hearing what you started with, so we can do a little bit of both, so it just looks a little bit more natural looking, I'll call it, from that.
Yeah, if you can maximize screening and sound, and then add 20 arborvitae to whatever you come up with, that would be.
Yeah, I don't think we. Yeah, I don't think we need them more, but I think they can, what we have there actually make it look what you're trying to accomplish. Because again, the trees didn't do anything with sound. They were already above that sound elevation, and frankly, trees really won't do anything.
And that doesn't obscure the screening provided by the trees are not hiding the building from the road or anything about it.
No, there's the kind of the trees that we're looking through already at that area, and that section of the building is hundreds of feet from the road, if you recall. The front side's closer, that back side's much further.
Going back to the detention basin, 701, where it says the edge of the woods. I see a lot of plantings at the very front of it. I'd be inclined to think that this was a minor modification if where you had the edge of the woods, you beef that up with some plantings so that you really couldn't see it from Depot Street. Is that something that's easy to do? Or is that, you see where it's the edge of the woods? I'm concerned going up and down Depot Street. A minor modification to me is you can't see it, you know, it's not an issue. So if a couple trees makes it not an issue, is that something that? I see the tree lines behind it. Is there a reason why there wasn't like from?
I'm not sure I'm following your question. If I can repeat back. it might-
701. I see 701.
Yep, I'm on it.
Okay, at the front of the detention basin. At the entrance, the words edge of the woods. You see that? If that was covered up so you couldn't see it from Depot Street, then you wouldn't see it from Depot Street, right?
So if I can speak back, so you essentially want me to extend some landscaping from where we stop at the turn radius going to the property line, just add a couple more
Yeah.
bushes.
That way, to me, if it's a minor modification, no one can see it. You're switching out things, it's positive. To me, that feels like a win-win. Does that make sense?
I can add some more bushes in that area.
I'm in agreement with you.
Okay.
I think it would look goofy to add up a row of arborvitae's in that area, so I did.
Probably, lots of you over time.
Yeah, so I think extend that landscape berm that we currently have, you can extend it down to the edge of the
Yes.
property.
Yeah.
Not to be nitpicky, but on top of the 20 on it.
We've got the ones in the back, we're gonna reestablish the ones in the front and make it so we focus on the corner and make it more along the go up and down the hill a little bit in that area, so it looks more natural.
Yeah, just so you can't see it. I mean, that's why, to me, it's minor. If it's,
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah,
That's
I'm not, I just want to be careful. It's not like a screen, a wall. It buffers the view.
bunch of
It's not a,
something that makes it look, buffers the view.
we can-
Buffers the view, is the language I'll choose to use.
yeah, I just want to be careful with the words. So I'm
Yep,
saying the right
buffer the
thing.
view.
We'll have bushes in there to buffer the view and we'll sprinkle the landscaping along that.
And that 200, varieties of that.
Just
Amazing how that keeps going.
It's minor.
To 30 caliber exotic trees.
No.
I guess it's just a question for the board based on experience. Brian brought up kind of staggering them to look a little less militant and natural. Does bringing in a variety of trees do anything more to enhance like the natural look rather than?
We have that.
I see that, I see that on the perm, but then,
Oh, you're talking behind the basin? Yeah, it's a different purpose. So the reason we do that is that's for screening.
should create a wall.
Yeah, that's to
Okay.
create screening. The other one, we're just trying to
Then-
make it look like a natural
Yeah, I
landscape.
can see on like a specific legend that outline. What
Yeah.
was there, but
Yeah, and those are the, if you're familiar with the green giant arborvitae's, yeah, those are the ones that get fat and tall and stay green all year.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think everyone's addressed the questions I have. I just want to hide this as much as possible for the neighbors who are there. I think they've been impacted over time. And I agree with having more dampening the effect of the berm. You mentioned it's gonna be a wall on top of the berm.
There was a small, so when we start the berm, you don't just start at the height and stop, right? You have to ramp up to get to the height. So
Yeah.
while we're ramping up, we're not able to get to that height that was specified.
Yeah.
So there's a wall on the section while you ramp up. So you can see it on sheet 701, if you look at it. The wall is essentially the same wall that was there previously. It's just starting to go up the slope.
Okay,
And once we build the slope to the height where it hits the site that was, the height that was specified by your consultant.
14 to 16 feet.
I want to say it was 15 to 17. I think one section was 15, then it went to 17.
Okay,
And once we hit that height with the earth, we don't need the fence anymore.
fine.
And it actually what works nice about that, the fence is in the back of the site, right? It's on the development side, on the Depot Street side is where the berm is. You don't need the fence there. So that actually.
That fence, you make it blend in with what's there otherwise.
I'm not sure how to make it blend.
Color.
Oh, color wise, I'm
Color.
sorry. We can certainly paint it, sure.
Just to make it not as harsh. So it looks a little, as much as natural as it can be.
The clarification, is it a fence or a wall?
But it's essentially the same. A wall sometimes is, you use them interchangeably, like I use a wall, like a retaining wall, it's holding something up. It's essentially just, it's the same thing. It's just it's a certain PSI that it's not like not like a fence like you see in your yard, where you see a 6-foot vinyl fence, it's meatier than that, it has to be a little thicker, sometimes you'll see like the thicker wood slats right on top of each other. Sometimes you'll see they have concrete panels in there, there's different types you can use, but it's.
So I guess my question is, if originally there was a 15-foot wall of a certain kind, and you have to build up gradually to the slope for the berm, that section that's not affected by the berm, and as you go up the berm, shouldn't that be made out of the same sound density, whatever they were gonna make?
It is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, that part, that's it, we're supplementing it, where we couldn't do it with all berm. What was previously approved and
That
reviewed,
wall is.
that continues.
Okay,
The berm is reducing the volume.
That's correct.
right, okay.
Yeah, sorry if I didn't explain that properly.
Anything else? Any decision we need to make this evening? I'm sorry, Dominic. Any additional
Yes.
input?
No, I think I think it was summarized pretty well. We had done a peer review. We had some relatively minor comments. They addressed them. I believe you have in front of you a letter from end of last week, beginning of this week. I honestly don't remember. Basically just verifying that fact.
Jim, your opinion, this is a minor change?
In review, in terms of the technical details, I would say yes, it's a minor. It rose slightly above, it wouldn't be a field change that the building commissioner could issue, but I think if the board is in agreement, I think it is a minor modification.
And Dominic, you're in agreement as well?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I didn't think I wouldn't have called it a major.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question? Joe, this is.
Yes. Answer, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Joe, just, it's unrelated, but what's going on with the parcel of land that?
Right, Chris answer, we hold off on that.
All right, as long as, yeah, after, okay.
I entertain a motion for this to be a minor change.
So,
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of minor change, please signify by saying aye.
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 That motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just quickly, that motion was for the a minor modification with the additional landscaping that was discussed this evening.
Correct.
Thank you.
Additional.
We better stop before we get to 100.
You gotta stop quick.
Okay, I'd like to address, I think, the point you were going to.
Yeah.
Joe, can you bring me up to date now that we've made a decision? Where do we stand with the land that was initially going to be donated to the town? The neighbors indicated they would appeal. The appeal I believe, did not take place. Where do we stand right now with that?
Well, I'm more than happy to provide you an update, but I do want to make a slight correction. It was, we offered to donate it to the town, but the board chose not to include it within the scope of this decisions. So then it became a private matter with the residents. And I was constantly in touch with the residents group by their spokesman, have kept him up to date throughout the process. There was a significant delay because the applicant did not purchase the property until I believe it was late November. There were some issues cleaning up some easements over there. So the closing was delayed. And the parcel that will be donated was segregated out of the financing portion so that it could be done. But as I was beginning the process of getting the restriction done, John brought up the possibility that there might need to be a modification. And of course, obviously, if it became a major modification and we had to have a new public hearing, that would have subjected my client to another appeal. So we held off pending this board's vote tonight. And thank you very much. I too believe it was a minor modification. So I'm glad we all concluded that. So now that we're past this and the building permit is issued, I'll be back in touch with the residents group, and they're going to need, in my opinion, they're going to need to hire counsel to review the deed and set up an entity to take the donation. I've provided them with as much assistance as I can without crossing the line of representing both sides on the transaction. So I'll reach out to their spokesman after this meeting, and we'll get the process going again.
Let me ask you a question. The appeal is not final. The landowner is right now up in the air. Is it feasible that as opposed to having the neighbors purchase it and have to pay taxes on it, would it be donated to the town?
Well, I'd be more than happy, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, but I know that the taxes issues were something that the residents were concerned about. I actually had told them that they should look into a 61A classification for the property to reduce the taxes. At the time that we began discussing it, the owner of the property was not in a position to, and that the owner being the prior owner, to submitting it to the assessors prior to the required date in November. So we're, to the extent that the residents want to file a 61A classification or 61B, they're going to have to wait till next year to do that. And I have no problems with adjusting the land, the transfer, because as you know, the transfer will be made with a restriction that it cannot be subject to development. I can facilitate it to the town if the town council and the residents are in a position to accept the donation. I know you have a town, I believe, and I'm not your town council, but I believe many towns, in order for the town to take a gift of land, it has to be voted on in a town meeting. So again, to the extent that that would be the board's prerogative, I'll work cooperatively. I think I'll work cooperatively with you and the residents to facilitate that. And perhaps it could be placed on a warrant agenda, a warrant article for your spring town meeting.
Jim, is that realistic?
The process is absolutely accurate. Spring might be a little bit too soon. I think the warrant closes in a couple weeks here, but if timing worked out, then great. If not, fall town meeting seems to happen right around the corner.
Okay, I don't know if we need to vote on that, but I think that'd be the best avenue for all parties involved.
I don't disagree with you. I think it is. I think it will be a burden in perpetuity on the trust or the group that owns it to deal with the taxes on it. And to the extent that the town can take it and add it to its open space, that was our original intent. And again, we would be transferring it with a restriction on development.
If you could have look at that process, it'd be greatly appreciated.
And Jim, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but there's a possibility if you could, even if you got it on the warrant, we couldn't clean it up, we could pass it over at the town meeting, but just to get a placeholder.
I could certainly talk with the town administrator about that.
And I'd be more than happy to reach out to Dennis also.
Joe, thank you for, I thank the applicant for continuing to want to donate this land, and our goal is to keep it open space, and that it's a fantastic opportunity for that neighborhood. So let's make that happen whatever way we can. Thank you for your ongoing effort.
And you have my representation that notwithstanding the fact that I'm trying to reduce my workload, I will stay on that for the next couple of months with you. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is the approval of minutes from the December 8th meeting.
That should be January 26th.
January 26th.
Thank you all.
Good night.
good night. Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Take care.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Probably increase your bill.
Lump sum.
Thank you, Dominic.
Dominic, thank you.
Good night.
So we all had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting.
Yeah.
Hi.
What's the date?
January 26th.
Move to approve the minutes from January 26th.
Second.
Good job, Tina.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second. Aye.
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 Thank you,
We're
Jim.
adjourned.
Bellingham. Good night, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks,